I would like to talk about some of the real estate issues that we brought up this week because we have a little bit of time.
That episode is actually going to come out the same day as this podcast.
Hey, how about that? So go over to China Uncensored if you weren't already and check out a full breakdown on China's real estate crisis.
I don't think it's the podcast driving people to the...
You never know. But yeah, because this also ties on to the issue of decoupling because, you know, China's economy is not what it was or what it seems to be. And so, Matt, I know you did a lot of the research on...
Yeah. Well, there was a bunch of stuff that made it into the episode and also a bunch of stuff that didn't make it into the episode.
Ooh.
But
this is why you need to watch China Unscripted and not just China Uncensored.
So there's huge protests in China over the real estate crisis, but the background to those protests is actually more interesting because you have a development crisis. Like China's real estate development is essentially an estimated 30% of China's GDP. So
a big amount.
It's so big that the Chinese Communist Party absolutely cannot afford to lose it or even lose half of it.
It's too big to fail.
Well, it is, right? And so there's, different attempts at bailouts or sort of quasi-roundabout bailouts. But these real estate companies are, instead of building an apartment complex and then selling units, they say they're going to build it. They build a little model. They bring people over to the exhibition and say, oh, buy a unit now to sort of keep your place in it. And people...
That's not totally unheard of, though.
It's not totally unheard of. But in China, 90%
that's a lot
of apartment units are being resold. And I say apartments. In America, you'd probably say condos because they're being owned.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they still call them apartments, which you buy. But just to be clear, we're talking about the purchase of units for ownership and not rental.
Yeah, but it's not the fact that they're not built yet that makes the whole thing crazy.
So what finances real estate development is the selling of units. So if they're going to build an apartment complex with 100 units, they need the sale price of the 100 units to exceed the cost of building those buildings, plus all the other management expenses.
I think I'm getting lost in a lot of the details.
Yeah, and so like that's the way developers make money is by selling units. But the problem is that Evergrande and Shimao and all these other big developers, like they'd been raising money through a bunch of other things. So one is by listing, stocks, which is okay because that's kind of generally how companies raise capital, and it comes with its own problems. But also they were selling financial products, which we didn't talk about in the episode.
Yes, that is actually a big problem.
So it's like you kind of buy these complex things like, okay, I will buy a wealth management product from Evergrande for which they promise to pay me back with some good interest rate.
You're basically loaning your money to Evergrande.
Right. And in return, you have a promise of somewhat more money coming, right? Because it's a return with interest.
Let's say the bank would give you like 2% or something.
Right. But this wealth management project might
20%, something crazy.
Which is essentially like buying a bond in a company or maybe a junk bond, right? Because junk bonds essentially are just bonds that are high risk, high reward, right? But you don't know they're high risk because you don't, for some reason, see this real estate crisis coming.
Well, I think it's because wealth management products like this are pretty common in China. This is like a big problem with their debt industry, right?
Yeah, well, and that's a whole other issue, although it's quite tied together.
Well, I'm just saying that it's not the average Chinese person to think that this is sketchy. You might not.
Yeah. Also, the U.S. has done a whole bunch of wealth management products, although a lot of them are just invested in by corporate investors.
Okay,
So
I think we're losing the plot a
let's-
little bit.
we are, because I was about to go into
long
the 2008 real estate
So,
crisis. But okay, so
Hold
there's
on,
the-
I think we just need to simplify it.
No, let me just so here's the simplification. These companies, developers should be making money by selling units, but they're also raising money by all these other methods that are essentially them borrowing money for which they have to pay that back plus with interest. And that they started to get over leveraged because they were borrowing so much money and then they had to pay out so much with interest, and they weren't getting enough from the selling of units to handle all that. And they really shouldn't have been doing it anyway, because ultimately they don't make money by loaning. They don't make money by borrowing money. They lose money by that. And so these developers ended up in this situation where they just had this whole cluster of debt, and then
They couldn't sell enough units to cover it.
Exactly.
Thank you, Shelley.
And then it's affecting, because they're not finishing this construction in over 100 cities in China. Not only are people not able to move into their homes, but it's affecting all these other aspects of the economy that are tied to real estate.
Well, I think also the part of the problem is that people aren't just like, people are already paying a mortgage on an apartment that they don't live in, or like they've already paid.
Yeah, they've bought an apartment.
They bought
that
an apartment,
they don't have,
and now they want the
exist.
money back.
Yeah,
and
because
the money's
they're not going to complete
gone,
it.
right? Like the money is just like there's no money there. There's no apartment there.
Right. If Evergrande can't,
They don't have the money to build the apartments.
then they don't have the money to refund what people have already paid. And anyway, it's kind of like a lot of the money comes through the banking system because people have mortgages. They're not just paying in cash.
Well, so the big picture now is that you have all of these individual Chinese people who have paid money for something they're never going to get. These big real estate companies don't have the money to complete construction or pay off their debt. This is 30% of China's GDP, essentially, the real estate market.
If you especially also consider like construction, like all of the things.
All the other businesses, furniture makers,
Painters, landscapers.
That's
plumbers.
probably, but like it's mostly the money that's being pumped into the developers, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But a project completed only halfway that doesn't create livable units is essentially completely money down the drain.
Not to mention that it is actually worse because you have this half-built building that is now like deteriorating, right? Because it's not finished.
And it's also taken up farmland or land that could be used for other things, right? I mean, most cities are essentially built on what used to be farmland, right? Because you just gradually take over the farms and you build.
No.
So
so this is an economic disaster. And on top of it, you have the issue where like people are protesting, obviously. This is like one of the most significant protest movements. Some people have compared it like it's the biggest since 1989 Tiananmen.
It's just not like a horde of people
in a location.
Yeah.
People are protesting by not paying their mortgages or whatnot. But as we mentioned in this episode, that China has a social credit system, and you can be penalized for things like not paying on your mortgage. And so this could affect people being able to get loans, get mortgages in the future, which then just creates this spiral of people not being able to afford homes. Real estate developers aren't able to sell homes, and then you just get into this negative feedback loop where the Chinese economy just implodes.
It's also especially bad because traditionally a lot of the wealth that people accumulate, they put into real estate. They don't.
That's like the only real investment source for Chinese people.
Well, now they have all these crazy wealth management products too.
Yeah.
So, which are also run by the real estate developers. So there's a lot of ways in which people are getting scammed out of their money.
Mm-hmm.
But people used to think, with good reason, that real estate prices would always go up.
Yes, real estate always seemed to be the safe place to put money. That's why when people, find out that they cannot get that apartment or the money back, or like they will protest. They will go in person. Evergrande had a problem with their wealth management products earlier. Was it this year or last year? Where like essentially people went to the offices and protested. Some of the workers at the real estate company actually were.
I think it was the tail end of last year.
Yeah, were protesting there because they had been pressured into buying these wealth management products
Oh yeah.
from their employer, and then they weren't getting the money back.